everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the Project and Event Manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items, our Code of Conduct and Event Guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our Code of Conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary. Remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will be sharing the link in the chat for our channel. And if you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speakers here. Hi
hey,
there,
everybody.
Dave. Welcome back.
Hi, all.
Thanks.
And gladly have you here today. We've talked a lot about this rescheduled episode 1 of this series. We're finally here and super excited for it.
Rounded off with the first one.
Thank you. Yeah, well, again, this episode actually fits whether it's the first one or the last one. It doesn't really matter, right?
No, it's good.
Great. Well, take it away.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Max Yermanov. I am joined with my colleague, Dave Lloyd, and we are here to talk about the Azure DevOps or GitHub, which one is the right fit for my organization. Dave, do you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Yeah, this is. I've been looking forward to this one, Max. This is a good one. Talking about lots of places. Lots of people are wondering, right? You know, with GitHub getting all the new features, it's getting. Should they be switching to GitHub or should they be staying on Azure DevOps? And they got a lot invested in Azure DevOps, and they're not sure what to do. So hopefully we can help them.
Exactly, yeah. And again, this session also covers any new adopters, whether they, again, it's
Absolutely.
not just, yeah.
Yeah. Somebody new who's looking to have some sort of DevOps ALM tools, and what should they go with?
Yeah. All right. Just like before, the more interactive the session is, the better it will be. So please keep your questions coming. You can submit your questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them right away. Or if we cannot answer them right away, we're going to take them at the end. If we cannot take them at the end, then we're going to take them offline and make sure that you get the answers. But again, please have the question coming. All right, let's keep going. A little bit about myself. My name is Max Yermahanov, Senior Consultant at Object Shop, Azure DevOps MVP, GitHub Fast Track Partner. There's a bunch of my email addresses, my blog, my Twitter. Again, if you can always find me online.
Yeah, and for me too, I'm also a consultant at Object Shop and Microsoft Azure MVP. Like Max said, there's some contact information. I also have a blog that I write on Medium with stuff about Azure DevOps and GitHub. And that's my Twitter handle if you want to. I don't put a lot on Twitter, but now and again.
Yeah, so again, if you have any questions now or later, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. All right, before we start, let's set up some ground rules or some expectations, I guess, right? So there's a few questions we want to answer during this presentation. The main question we want to answer is, which tool is the better fit for my enterprise right now? Again, both tools are great. We're trying to identify which one fits better for your specific organization, highlight what would be the criteria for selecting one versus the other, right? Or how you can combine them too. We are comparing SaaS solutions only, so we do not compare on-premise solutions. On-premise solutions similar comparison will apply, but again, for the purposes of this presentation, we're only talking about the online SaaS solutions. Software is rapidly evolving, so the things that we say today might not be relevant tomorrow. Usually they are, but things are changing fairly fast, especially again in this area.
Sometimes literally tomorrow.
Yeah, or today. Yeah.
Well,
All right.
today.
So again, things that we might say that missing from certain things or present in certain things, again, might change tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Opinions are of, I should say, the opinions of our opinions based on experience, hands-on experience, right? So this is not again, neither of us working for Microsoft or GitHub. All right. And most importantly, just want to get this out of the way, right? Microsoft is committed to supporting and investing in Azure DevOps while it executes on GitHub strategy. What this means is Azure DevOps does not go away. There's no plans to get rid of Azure DevOps, right? At least there's no plans that we know of, or plans that would be like in the near future plans, right? Right now, both Azure DevOps and GitHub have been maintained, supported, and invested in, right? There's been work that's been features that have been added to both, right? So it is my belief that whoever told you that they like get off the Azure DevOps and jump on GitHub is wrong. Again, if you're comfortable in Azure DevOps, stay in Azure DevOps, right? Microsoft has been really, really good about maintaining its product. So, all right, ready to move on?
Let's go.
All right, so first let's do a quick architectural overview, right, of the key components inside each of those systems. So we have Azure DevOps on the left, we have a GitHub on the right. So in Azure DevOps, we have the hierarchy starts with the organization. So this is like a boundary, the container, this is where all your content lives, right? So the Azure DevOps organization at top level, what's the word? Element, component, right? By the way, organization is equivalent to project collection on-premise. And inside the organization, you have team projects. So inside the team project, that's like a sub component or sub module of where people work, right? So team project is, again, the name is unfortunate. It's not really a project. It's like a workspace, a common ground where people come to work, right? And inside the team project, you have repos. You can have public and private repos. You can have Git repos. You can have TFVC repos, right? So Azure DevOps is not Git only. And you have you have a concept of teams. Team is a collection of people. Anything to add there, Dave?
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about Azure DevOps. So first, I agree with you on the team project. It's not a great name. Workspace is a great name for it. But there's also the other cool thing that they do with Azure DevOps that a lot of people don't realize is that there's administration at each of those levels. So there's organization administration, there's team project administration, and there's team administration. So you could give a team leader the ability to manage add people to its team, change their Kanban board, change their backlogs, change their portfolio views, and do different things without having to give them the rights to administer a project as well. So that's kind of a cool distinction in Azure DevOps.
Yeah, there's also repo administration, but there's basically very granular permissions that you can set. Thank you, Dave. All right, so on GitHub side, you have the hierarchy starts with the enterprise account. So you can set up an enterprise account that will be tied to your licensing, users, and everything. And inside that enterprise account, you can have set up an organization or multiple organizations that will fall under that account. You can enforce policy at the account level, which will trickle down to the organization level, right? So that's one of the things, in my opinion, missing from Azure DevOps. Again, it would be nice to have a way to organize the organizations, right? Especially with the larger companies that have a lot of organizations, right? And they struggling to enforce policies across them, right? There are ways to do it in Azure DevOps, but it's just you have to do it one at a time, right?
Yeah.
We also have the concept of organization in GitHub, very similar to organization concept in Azure DevOps. You can, and again, inside the organization, you don't have a team project. There's no team projects in GitHub. There's just repos and teams. Repos can be private, internal, and public. We'll get back to internal repos in a few minutes. But all the basic, there's no team project. So if you, there's no way to, there's no easy way or clear way to organize your repos together, right? Like, for example, in Azure DevOps, it's team project. In GitLab, like there's like a group, repo group, right? Where you can say, I'm going to group those repos together. There's nothing like this in GitHub. There's still a way to manage and navigate and organize the repos and make sure that you only see what you were supposed to see, obviously. But there's no concept of like, okay, repo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 belongs to bucket 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like in Azure DevOps, by default, if you're a member of a team, if you're a contributor in a team project, you just see all the repos.
Yeah.
In GitHub, it's similar, but it's a setting that you can control. Like you can say what rights do people have by default to everything. But if a repository is set to private, then you need to be given explicit rights to see it. So it's very different how the repository kind of feels in GitHub. Not that it's not a first-class citizen in both, but it has a lot more secure functionality in GitHub, or that's kind of easier to manage, I think.
Yeah.
Also interesting there, and I don't want to jump to something that you're about to talk about, but in GitHub, you've got private and internal and public. But if your enterprise account has enterprise managed users enabled on it, which gives you the ability to add users through Azure Active Directory into your GitHub enterprise account without them having to have a their own GitHub ID, yeah, their own handle. If that's the case, then you don't have public. Public only exists in an enterprise without EMU.
Because you don't want to have in your, but EMU, it's like a private instance of your GitHub organization.
Exactly.
And you don't really want to have any public repos inside it, right? You should have a separate account for it. Yeah, we'll talk more about that, but thank you very much. What else? All right, let's move on. Any question? Again, questions, keep them coming. All right, so let's quickly go through some quick decisions, right? So use what criteria are there for you to make a quick decision saying, okay, you know what, I need this, so Azure DevOps is my choice. So you need to use Azure DevOps if you require hosting data in the countries other than the United States. So if data residency is important to you, then we should, again, you should choose Azure DevOps because GitHub at the moment only have presence in the United States. So you cannot have a data center GitHub. You cannot have a GitHub instance in Europe or Canada or Australia, I don't know, Asia, like in Azure DevOps. In Azure DevOps, you get to pick a region that you want to store your, where you want to store your data. Again, so data residence is important to you, pick Azure DevOps. Again, we're talking about the online SaaS solutions only. Obviously, it doesn't apply to the enterprise, to the servers, to the hosted servers. If you need to have an integrated test management solution, use Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps has a great test management solution. Dave is the best guy I know that explains how to use that test management solution because it is, again, it's very powerful, very feature rich, and again, unless you are into test management, then it's very hard to follow, in my opinion, right? But again, Dave says it's easy, and I believe him.
Yeah, it's a great product, and it's only in Azure DevOps, and there's we've never heard any plans of moving something similar into GitHub, so that's just that's where it lives.
And again, just to be clear, this is about the test management, not running tests, not executing automated tests, right? Because both of them can execute it. This is about the test management, test suites, test cases, those things, right? All right, moving on. Required to integrate. If you need to integrate any non-Git repositories, then Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps supports TFVC, which is native TFS source control. It supports Git very much. You can integrate with SVN. There's other ways to integrate with other source control systems, but again, if you have to get the code from anything other than Git, Azure DevOps is the way to go. All right, so let me go back. Dave, anything to add?
No, I'm following questions here, Max. We've got all
Okay,
kinds
thank
of
you, Dave.
questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's take them, some of them.
So we're going to talk about pricing at some point, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to leave that one. I did I did respond to Lisa, but we'll leave that for a minute. There's a couple. Does this move all free code committers in GitHub move to Azure DevOps? Is there a future plan? I'm not completely sure. I think they're asking if Azure DevOps will have public repos, and yes, it does.
Azure DevOps has public repos for sure. Yeah.
So you can create public repos in Azure DevOps if that's what you're asking.
If you're more about the licensing, then again, we'll talk about that one of the slides.
Yeah, exactly. Does the overview for Azure DevOps apply to both ADO Server and ADO Services? Yep.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah.
But
server's
like
always a little bit behind.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say server's always a little bit behind.
Yeah.
The cloud version, but from a feature point of view, they always seem to come up to par for the most part.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's keep going.
Go ahead.
All right, pick GitHub. So if you quick decisions on GitHub, use GitHub if you require GitHub Advanced Security or depend upon. We will talk more about it, but GitHub Advanced Security is an add-on to GitHub Enterprise Cloud, and it is, to me, it's easily top 3 best features of GitHub. It makes shifting left for the security, making so easy. It makes that experience so much smoother, right? GitHub in general is very developer-centric, right? It's very obsessed with developer experience. It's again, the ultimate goal is keep developers happy, right? And it makes, again, GitHub Advanced Security makes that first of discovery of the vulnerabilities in your code, or how to handle it, how to mitigate that risk, how to triage that risk inside your code. Again, it makes that process very smooth, right? Again, so if you need advanced security, go with GitHub. If you need code spaces, and again, we talked more about the Git code spaces in one of our previous modules. Again, beautiful, beautiful feature of GitHub. It allows you to spin up your development environments on the fly, like this. It's extremely great functionality, and again, it allows you to enforce standards and across the development as well. If you need mobile app, GitHub has mobile app. Actually, a nice mobile app too. You can do 2-factor stuff on it, and you can get pull requests and a lot of really cool stuff. Manage issues. There's a lot of things that you can do in it easily. So again, if mobile app is important to you, GitHub. I probably wouldn't put it at the top of a list. That's why it's at the bottom, but it's there. And most importantly, it is my opinion that, and Dave can chime in, if you're starting from scratch, if you're picking between Azure DevOps and GitHub, if you're a greenfield project, go with GitHub. Because first of all, it's great. Second of all, the amount of innovation that's been introduced to the GitHub on a daily or hourly basis is amazing. The amount of new features that's coming in, and they're all great features. Again, outstanding, right? Azure DevOps is still there, and there's still new features that have been added, but to Azure DevOps, but nowhere near at the same pace as to GitHub, right? What else? It has all the bells and whistles that you want, right? you might have to, depending on where you are or how you used to do things, you might have to adjust them a little bit. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. And anything else, Dave?
No, I would agree with that. It's interesting because a few months ago I wouldn't have, but actions have come a long way, and the only thing really that GitHub or that Azure DevOps at a high level has that GitHub doesn't is the test plans. So, and you could use the test plans in Azure DevOps with GitHub. The two using the two together is also a great option.
Well, again, we'll talk more about that in the slides, right? This is just again, quick decision, right? If you start from scratch, my suggestion is go with GitHub. All right, let's keep going. So let's dig into every service or vertical inside of each product, right? So each product has a number of what I call verticals or services. So it has like Azure DevOps has Azure Boards, Azure Pipelines, Azure Repos, Azure Tests, Azure Artifacts, and so on and so forth, right? GitHub has similar components. So let's compare them side by side. Which one is better? All right, so Azure Boards provides, again, it's an excellent tool. It's beautiful, very mature work planning tool, right? It's robust capabilities for developers and non-developer roles, right? GitHub Issues, they are very, GitHub Issues GA, they are very, in my opinion, very developer-centric, right? If you're coming from the enterprise world or the business area, GitHub Issues is a little bit difficult to use, right? They're great for developers, great for small projects, but for the bigger enterprises, the way they are right now, GitHub Issues are very difficult to use. GitHub Issues Beta, the one that's coming, the one that's out there, public beta right now, that thing is beautiful. That thing is still a beta, still work in progress, but the amount of functionality that's been introduced into it regularly, it's amazing. It is, in my opinion, it's almost caught up with Azure Boards, right? There's a few things that it's still missing, like templates, but not. But again, functionally, it's beautiful. Give it a shot. We talked about GitHub Issues in our GitHub overview, but again, that's where it sits right now. So again, like I said, new GitHub Issues has a lot of potential and it's beautiful. Again, excellent tool, very simple, very powerful.
Try it out and give it feedback. Try it out and give them feedback so they can make it better.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's actions on their own. The general availability version of it is, it's just, it's nothing. It's a board.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, GitHub Issues Beta, beautiful. Give it a shot. So, so to me, if we have to compare them side by side, I would prefer Azure Boards at this point because it's more mature. It has a lot more functionality, bells and whistles. It's been around for longer. The usage, the business people love it, especially the things like Excel integration or Microsoft Project integration. Again, I don't know why. Well, I know why, but it's just it's such a small thing, but it matters so much. So again, Azure Boards right now are better. Fear not, if you're on GitHub and you want to take advantage of Azure Boards, you definitely can. Right? It's a couple of clicks away. You can integrate Azure Boards with your GitHub repos, no problem.
Yep. We got a question from Jack asking. This will be fun because Max and I are, neither of us are Jira fans. Is GitHub Issues comparable to Jira? Much better, in my opinion. Much better.
GitHub Issues Beta or GitHub Issues? So if you're talking about GitHub Issues Beta, it's way better than Jira. Azure Boards are better than Jira.
Yeah, agree.
I do not like Jira. Well, Jira is, again, it's trying to do too much. It's a little bit messy. We can talk about that offline if I'm happy to share my opinion on this. But Issues are better than Jira. It has a lot more potential, and it's still early, right? It's a relatively new product, and it's just again the amount of things you can do with it right now is amazing. The amount of things that you should be able to do with it in the near future, it's outstanding. It is, again, I love it. Yeah. It's my new go-to tool.
One thing I'm going to add about the boards is because I worked with a lot of enterprise customers who, may not be agile, and they've still got a PMO, and they want to track work at a portfolio level, and Azure Boards can do all that. It does it very nicely. GitHub just doesn't have that kind of stuff yet. Yeah. Yep. And I'm hopeful it will come, but right now, so I agree with you, Max. Right now, Azure Boards is still the.
All right. Hopefully, Harold, that answers your questions. By the way, you can still integrate Jira with GitHub if you want to. It's not a problem. I don't think you can. There's no. You can integrate it with Azure DevOps as well. It's a plugin that you have to pay for. And it's, by the way, just so you know, this is on Jira site you have to pay for, not on Azure DevOps site that you have to pay for. So, and again, that's one of the things that I do not like about Jira is that everything costs you money. Like literally almost everything. Step to the left, step to the right. It's, again, boom, so much money. All right, let's keep going. Azure repos versus GitHub repos. Azure is just quickly, Azure repos code review experience is much cleaner and easier to navigate. If you tried the Azure repos, again, the pull request experience, very clean, beautiful, very functional and effective. GitHub issues, GitHub repos pull request, it's a little bit clunkier, right? It's very functional, it's very, very powerful, but it's a little bit more difficult to use. All right, keep going. Azure repos branch policies. So to enforce the branch protection or branch rules on your repos, on Git repos, like protect, so that every commit to protect the branch, like master or main, has to come through the code review or pull request. That's called a branch policy. I think the branch policies in GitHub, in Azure repos are more robust and easier to use, easier to enforce than they are in GitHub. Again, there are things that you can do in Azure, in branch policies, in Azure repos, that it takes you an extra effort to implement it in GitHub. You definitely can, but it just takes you an extra effort. An example is I want in my branch protection rules, I want to say when this set of files from this folder have been modified, I want the team A to approve it. When the files in this folder or when all other files have been updated, I want the team B to approve it, right? You can do it in GitHub, but again, you have to dance your way around it. You have to set up a code owners. You have to download the GitHub app called Consensus and make it happen. It's just not as smooth. You can do it, just not as smooth. Having said that, the GitHub, the whole REST API experience for the GitHub is much better. So if there's something missing for you in the functionality, you can definitely build it in GitHub much easier than you would, not much easier. It's just, you can do a lot more in GitHub, right, than you can do in Azure DevOps. All right, GitHub repos are faster. This is, again, what's the word? It's a perception, right? At least my perception, the GitHub repos are faster. Snappier. GitHub in general seems to be a lot snappier than Azure repos. Not to say that Azure repos are slow, right? It's just GitHub is next level stuff. Dave? You're on mute, Dave.
I'm on mute on purpose because I'm trying to remember to mute myself while I answer questions because my typing was too loud. And I appreciate that feedback. I'm glad somebody mentioned it. You know what? GitHub repos are awesome. Nice UI, easy to use, like you say, fast. But at the same time, Azure repos are awesome too. I really there's certain things in Azure repos that I like better than GitHub, and there's a lot of things in GitHub I like better than Azure repos. So I have a hard time when you get to the repos picking here. To me, you might have a different opinion, but I find them fairly equal. I think GitHub repos has an edge. I think GitHub repos just has a little bit of an edge.
Yes, and again, if we're picking one versus the other, which one I like better, I pick GitHub Repos, because they are, again, this is what the GitHub is famous for. The extensibility of it is amazing. They just faster, snappier. Again, and then what's important is this is what the GitHub is known for. This is what people, again, so GitHub right now is like almost a de facto developer resume, right? So when like everybody's asking what's your GitHub handle, let me take a look what you've done, right? When you're talking about the new job or when you're talking about potential employers. So GitHub repos offer the dependency scanning and secret scanning. Again, we'll come back more to that. But this whole advanced security is not available in Azure repos. It's available in GitHub repos. And that thing is beautiful. And I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're at 1:30.
All right. Yeah. So
I was trying to keep up with questions, so I'm saying less.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Yeah, so GitHub repos, thanks to GitHub Actions, allows you to build a lot more flexible and highly specific workflows. GitHub Actions, we'll talk about them in a minute. Again, then they're beyond CI/CD. They're not just about CI/CD. You can automate almost anything inside the GitHub using GitHub Actions. We'll talk about that more. Another reason why I like GitHub repos better than I like Azure repos. But like Dave said, it's very, very close, right? All right, and finally, code spaces. GitHub repos, code spaces. I wish that feature was available in Azure repos, but it's not. And code spaces are awesome. If you haven't tried it, give it a shot. All right, let's go. Let's dig into GitHub Actions. When we talk about GitHub Actions, we're going to be talking about the pre scenarios, CI, CD, and combined scenarios, CI, CD. So in the CI, Azure Pipelines versus GitHub Actions, both are excellent when it comes to CI. Both can do the job just great, right? Again, very, very, very head-to-head kind of from functionality standpoint. The one thing that's missing from GitHub Actions, it doesn't support templates. If you need templates for your CI, for your builds, there isn't one, right? GitHub started introducing, recently introduced reusable workflows and composite actions. Not exactly templates, but close. So they're more like a task groups in Azure DevOps. But again, if you need templates, GitHub Actions don't have them right now. Azure DevOps do. There's no UI editor in GitHub Actions. If you want UI editor, if you want the classic pipelines that Azure DevOps has, GitHub Actions doesn't have it. GitHub Actions is all about YAML, just like the new Azure Pipelines. GitHub Advanced Security, again, it's only available. So making sure that if you want to scan your tools during your CI builds using Advanced Security, you cannot do that. You can only do that you cannot do it in Azure DevOps. You can only do it in GitHub. You can still scan your code using other third-party tools like Veracode, Checkmarks, White Source, so on and so forth. Right? There's a list of them. SonarQube. Actually, I'm lying. You can technically scan. You can use the advanced security. You can scan the code using GitHub, using Azure Pipelines, using GitHub Advanced Security. If you have it, it's not exactly supported, and you just run the command line, basically, tools that's going to do the scanning for you. But you can. Again, not promoting, just saying it's there. All right. So if I have to pick one, I can't. They're both great. It doesn't matter, right? And most importantly, by the way, if you're using GitHub Actions, if you're using Azure DevOps, if you're using GitHub for your code management, then you can still connect Azure Pipelines very easily to your GitHub, like a couple of clicks. And then you can leverage Azure Pipelines to do your CI or CD or both, right? So you don't have to pick and choose. You can pick the right tool for the right job. CD. Continuous deployment. So let's just jump right into it. GitHub Actions, when it comes to continuous deployment, is not as enterprise friendly as Azure Pipelines. It's missing things like templates, again, service connections, stages, gates, deployment groups, variables, secure files, environments are not as, what's the word, advanced, let's say. There's no native way to download the artifacts, right? Again, when you build something in GitHub Actions, you have to build and deploy it, right? You cannot just have one action to build it and then an action to download to deploy that artifact, right? You can, just no native way. Azure Pipeline is just great CD tool. Yes. All right. So Azure Pipelines allow you to deploy artifacts. So in Azure Pipelines, you can build in Jenkins and deploy through Azure Pipelines. You can build in TeamCity, Circle CI, and so on, and deploy in Azure. So Azure Pipelines, again, it's a lot more, what's the word? Open when it comes to integration, right? You can build in one place or keep your code in one place and use other pieces of Azure DevOps. GitHub is flexible, but it's not as flexible as far as the integration goes with as the Azure DevOps. GitHub Actions is rapidly growing, right? There's currently features that I wish Azure Pipelines had, right? And again, I'm sorry, there's currently features in GitHub Actions that I wish the Azure Pipelines had. But for example, secure deployments with OpenID, it's credentials, passwordless authentication to Azure or any other cloud resource for that matter. But I still pick Azure Pipelines when it comes to CD. I think it's better. Again, if you are in GitHub, you can definitely integrate your GitHub repos with Azure Pipelines and take advantage of both tools, right? You don't have to pick one or versus the other. All right, CI/CD all together.
Hold on, before you go.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to catch it, but I was on mute again. Lisa said, I disagree. I am easily consuming templates from other repos with Azure DevOps. Super simple. Oh, there's the question just popped up.
I'm not following the comment. You disagree with what, Lisa?
It says, I'm easily, well, I was assuming it was to something that you were talking about, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
No, she could be responding to, there's so much chatter going on. It's wonderful. Yeah. So I think she might be responding to somebody. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, carry on, Max.
All right, so CI/CD, with Azure Pipelines, you can have a separate CI and separate CD, right? So I can have a build that's going to go ahead and compile, that's a build pipeline is going to go ahead and compile, unit test my application and scan it, right? And then publish that artifact, make it immutable. And I can later have a separate deployment pipeline that will go ahead and I can say, you know what, I want to deploy this version. I want to deploy that someone else's version, right? Or some other version, I mean, right? With GitHub Actions, you can do that. It's not as smooth as in Azure Pipelines, right? So you usually just build and deploy at the same time, kind of thing, right? Again, I've been using TFS for years and years and years. I'm used and accustomed to the way to do things, the way I do things, right? So for me to have that separate build and deployment is a big thing. And maybe it's just my own, maybe I just need to get over it, right? Again, having build and deployment in one thing is and building every time, it's just not necessarily a bad thing. And it's not, right? It's just, it annoys me. All right, there's been a lot said about CI and CD. So again, when it comes to CI/CD process overall, I still prefer Azure Pipelines. GitHub Actions is powerful, flexible. When it comes to enterprise world, I still prefer Azure Pipelines. If I need to use GitHub Actions, I'll be happy to. If I'm given a choice, I'll stick with Azure Pipelines. Okay. All right. It's worth noting that GitHub Actions is not just about CI/CD, right? So you can do a lot more. In this case, we're comparing about CI/CD. So, all right, moving on. There's a few smaller ones. Azure Artifact versus GitHub Packages. That should be quick. Both packages, both GitHub Packages and Azure Artifacts, they're great. They offer storage. Like this, you get some basic storage. You get some storage for free, and then you pay based on consumption. They're both great. Both there, but very easy to use. GitHub Actions supports containers, and that's a deal breaker. I'm sorry, that stands out for me, right? I work with containers a lot, and it's important for me to for the package feed to support it. So Azure Artifact does not. Azure Artifact supports things like universal packages, which is essentially a zip file. Great feature. I'm not using it as much as I thought I would, but I'm using more containers. For Azure Artifacts, again, if you want to store containers, you can store them inside Azure's container registry, but that's besides the point, right? Azure Artifacts supports Upstream, so I can cache the public upstreams in my local registry if I want to. GitHub doesn't. Again, I have no. It's not a deal breaker for me.
It's nice though. It is a nice feature.
Yeah. Anyway, when it comes to GitHub packages and Azure DevOps, Azure Artifacts, I prefer GitHub packages because it supports containers. I do find the Azure Artifacts permission management, access management is easier and more granular. In GitHub packages, it's a little bit more convoluted, right? More than it should be. But definitely, again, you can still manage things. It's just, I find it confusing. Could be just me. Yep. All right, so Ipi Integrations and Extensibility both have very well documented REST API. GitHub REST API is a little bit more flexible, and I find it better documented. Not that the Azure DevOps is not documented well. It's just GitHub takes it to the next level, right?
Much easier to use.
Yeah. Azure DevOps, it's important to note, Azure DevOps has the Microsoft integration, which is very popular among business people. GitHub does not. I wish it has it. Little things, right? Again, GitHub is a lot more developer friendly and not less of a business people friendly, I guess, right? Well, you can keep everybody happy. GitHub has GitHub Apps. It's a separate conversation about GitHub Apps all entirely. That thing is beautiful. I'm just going to say that's all it is, right? It allows you to extend the GitHub functionality a lot more. All right. Myriad of integrations. Everybody has a lot of integrations, right? So as far as the integrations and APIs and extensibility, I find GitHub has a slight edge, like a little bit, just because it has a lot, again, better REST API functionality and better documentation. Licensing, fun part. Disclaimer, I'm not a licensing expert. Licensing scares and bores me at the same time. So, but again, taking numbers off the website, right? With Azure DevOps, you get 5 free users, basic users. Those are just basic developers, basically, 5 of them for free. Every other user costs you $6 a month. It probably will cost you less, depending on your level of agreement. Azure Basic is included in Visual Studio subscription if you already have it, so meaning you already have a basic license. Github Pricing, and Azure DevOps has stakeholders, so you can have as many business people as you want to. Those are the stakeholders. Those are the users that are not touching code, the test, right? They can still manage work, do the dashboards, work with dashboards. They can trigger, again, work with releases. Consume releases, I guess, right? And consume pipelines, not offer them. GitHub Pricing has layers. There's a free GitHub for Basics. There's $4 one for the Team Edition, where you get a little bit more features, actually a lot more features. But everything we talked about it so far, it's an Enterprise Edition user, right? That's the one that's $21 a month. And obviously the things like consumption-based things like advanced security or code spaces or packages or anything, also extra, they're based on the consumption. So numbers don't lie. Azure DevOps is cheaper. Right, Dave? Still on mute?
Yeah, no, I'm back. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure it is. You know, a couple of bucks a month, and you've got, and if you have some kind of Microsoft agreement, like if you're a large organization and you've got, then it's all covered. If you already have an MSDN subscription, it's covered. They'll do that kind of stuff with GitHub too for large customers, but
exactly,
for the regular for the regular folks who are just buying a handful of licenses for a team, yeah, you're definitely paying more for GitHub than you are for Azure DevOps. But I mean, it can, it can be argued that there's a lot in GitHub there,
absolutely.
adding more features to it to make it worth the money.
Absolutely. There's so many features in GitHub that, again, if you need them and you like them, they're definitely worth the money. Right, at the end of the day, again, this is the list price, by the way, right? So I'm sure your prices will be, if you have an agreement, your prices will be significantly smaller, right? And again, but still, $20 a month. It's for the enterprise, for the amount of features that you're getting. It's not that much, like considering how much other people are charging, right?
Yeah.
So. Yep. And again, GitHub packages, GitHub Actions, pipelines, artifacts. There's some in Azure DevOps or GitHub, right? There's some consumption-based charges. So you get certain amount of things for free, a fairly large chunk of things for free, right? That are included in your license. But if you abuse it or use too much of it, or again use more than you were allowed to, again what's allowed to, then again you get charged for it, right? Extra. It's a little bit, but it's worth mentioning it, right? So, honorable mentions: authentication and authorization. Azure DevOps supports Azure AD. That is it. Oh, you can technically connect with GitHub handle to Azure DevOps. There's ways to run it, right? But default and the main identity provider is Azure DevOps. I'm sorry, is Azure AD for Azure DevOps. In GitHub, you can connect, again, the default one is GitHub, obviously, authentication provider. You can connect using, you can connect to almost any identity provider, LDAP identity provider that you want. Just have to set it up. In GitHub, it's usually, if you're dealing with Azure DevOps, you usually set up things like Enterprise Managed Users instance, which connects you to your Azure AD. And then you use your Azure AD accounts to assign them to GitHub, right? There's some magic behind the scenes that's happening. Happy to talk to you about it offline. But at the end of the day, the only thing that's visible to users are your Active Directory accounts, right? The CLI commands, both beautiful, great. Again, we talked about advanced security. We talked about the code spaces, the wiki things that we haven't mentioned, but I saw some questions about it. The wikis are great in GitHub and Azure DevOps, right? Not as good as Confluence. I saw that in the comment again in the context of Confluence, right? But they're very, very good, good enough, basically, right? And GitHub Insights, GitHub Dashboard. I'm sorry, Azure Dashboard, Azure DevOps dashboards and widgets are dashboard functionality in general in Azure DevOps is richer, right? Built-in one that you can manage it. GitHub has GitHub Insights, which has a lot of variable information. It's not as customizable as I want it to be. All right, test plans. Azure DevOps has test plans. GitHub doesn't. Test plans are great if you need that solution, right? If you need the test management solutions. All right. GitHub pages. GitHub has GitHub pages to store static web pages. I don't know. I don't care about GitHub pages. In enterprise, I don't know. Why would you?
GitHub pages are pretty cool. I mean, it gives you, it essentially turns your can turn your README into a website, right, for somebody to look at. Well, not just your README, but yeah, they're pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm not saying they're not cool. I'm just saying there's a lot more other ways to get things done. So
yeah. I'm with you.
Again, the GitHub pages, it's great. I find myself not using it as much in the enterprise world, right? As I use Wiki, for example. Yeah. All right. What would I choose? If I'm starting from scratch, I would go with GitHub. If I need better, if I need more advanced planning tools, I would integrate GitHub with Azure Boards. Okay, very easy to do. Again, works beautifully. If I need more mature release pipelines, I would integrate GitHub with Azure Pipelines. Again, very easy to do. If I'm heavily invested in Azure DevOps, and I do not need any features from GitHub. I do not need any features unique to GitHub. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm reading the next one. If I'm heavily invested in Azure DevOps, but I need features unique to GitHub, I would start moving my Azure repos to GitHub, right? Move from Azure repos to GitHub repos. What's the word? There are tools out there to get this done. There's free tools out there to get this done, right? Then you can keep your code in GitHub repos, keep developers happy, and you know what? You need Azure Pipelines, you can keep your Azure Pipelines. You need Azure boards, you can keep Azure boards, right? So it's best of both worlds, right? And finally, if I'm heavily invested in Azure DevOps and I do not need any GitHub features, like I don't need it, I'm happy in Azure DevOps. If you're happy in Azure DevOps, stay in Azure DevOps. It is a great tool. It's an excellent tool. It's continuously been improved. The user base grows. It's excellent. So there's no plans to deprecate it. Stay in Azure DevOps. Stay put. I would still, again, look as like exploration exercise. I would still look at GitHub just to be aware of what's there, right? But again, there's no what's the word? You're not being forced to move to Azure to GitHub. You don't want to, don't move. All right. Any question?
Yeah, we do. We got one from John. Dependabot and container security should also be compared.
Compared to, so GitHub has Dependabot. Dependabot is the automated functionality inside the GitHub that can automatically, again, find suggestions to things like what's the word? Discover outdated versions of your dependencies, right, and offer the new ones, right? And here's the version, like version 1 was updated to version 2. Here is the would you like to update to version 2 kind of thing, right? So more proactively. Again, container security. I'm not really sure what you mean by container security, but okay. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that comparison is, to be honest, either. That's why I brought it up. I was hoping you might. Okay.
All right. So, but again, Dependabot, we did mention it with the advanced security. It's only available on GitHub, and it's beautiful, right? All right, let's go. Well, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. All right. So the right tool, ultimately, the presentation started with Azure DevOps versus GitHub, right? As we go through this, as we go through the slides, the more and more came up things like, you know what, it's not necessarily one tool versus the other, right? It's the right tool for the job, right? If you need to use Azure GitHub repos because you like them, use GitHub repos. If you want to take advantage of Azure Pipelines at the same time, Azure boards, you can do that. Again, it's not one tool versus the other. It's the right tool for the right job. So in a lot of cases, it's Azure DevOps plus GitHub. Very easy to integrate, very easy to use, right? And again, that way, you get take advantage of best tools out there, the right tool for the right job. You get to have more time to explore functionality. You don't have to move overnight, kind of thing. Use the tool that works for you. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, Dave. Do you have any comments?
No, I'm good. I'm still answering questions.
Thank you very much for that.
That was great. I'd like to say thank you to everybody. You know what? It's awesome. Often I talk more, but Max did a fantastic job, and I didn't really need to. But I got to have a chat with everybody online, and if I wasn't fast enough to answer it, they were answering for me. So, what a great audience! What a great group of people.
Yeah.
One more question. I won't type it in. I'll just answer it.
Yeah.
Harold, who was asking a lot of questions and answering a lot of questions for us too, just said, is there any significant difference between Azure DevOps and GitHub depending on the cloud services you're using? So I guess between AWS and Azure or Google. For example, if you're managing infrastructure as code or data streaming or data lakes, and he's saying, is that outside of scope? And I mean, it is a little bit because it's sort of the technologies, but I would say there really isn't. They're
No.
comparable, right? They're
Oh, yeah,
both. Yeah,
Well-
you're all the tools are there
Well-
for you to work with whichever cloud service you're using and whatever technologies you're using.
Yeah, whatever technology you use, whatever cloud service it uses, or on premise, right? So when you're in the cloud, you don't have to deploy to the cloud only. You can still deploy to on premise, right? You're just using that SaaS solution to, again, just consuming it. You can still deploy on premise, Azure, AWS, GCP, any other cloud provider. They both work great inside the GitHub and inside Azure DevOps. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. Any other questions? Anything else we can help with?
Somebody was looking for wanted to know if there's a public roadmap for Azure DevOps and GitHub. I don't have a link to one specifically.
If you Google it, they're there.
I tagged Alexei. Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty sure. I know there's roadmaps.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Whether they're public or not, I don't know.
Oh, there's
sure
public
there is.
roadmap for sure.
Yeah,
on both.
I don't know where it is, but definitely you just look for it.
Again, they both have been great when it comes to this, right? They share what's coming, and you know exactly. You have a good idea about what's going on and what's coming, right? Sometimes priorities change, but they make it as clear for you as possible, right? All right, so I'm just going through the questions quickly at the top. Meanwhile, again, feel free to ask.
I'm just going to jump in here.
Please.
We do have a question regarding replay on YouTube. Yes, we are recording this session and it will be available on our YouTube channel. Sorry, I'm just looking in the chat to find here.
Yeah.
You will see this video available on demand in 24 to 48 hours, roughly. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, this was a great session. I love to see interaction in the chat as much as we did. This is fantastic. Thank you both so much for the content and monitoring the chat. I know this sometimes is not super easy. We do have another question here, which is when will be the next session? So
okay, so let me answer I just want to make a small comment first. Yes, definitely the session will be available on YouTube. If you watch it all the way till the end, there's an after credit scene. I'm just messing with you. Of course, there isn't. Again, this Enterprise DevOps series was 4 modules, right? We had this module on the GitHub, how, why, and something else. And we had the in-depth session on Azure DevOps. We had an in-depth session on GitHub Enterprise Cloud. And we had this session that we did today when it's wrapping up, or the introductory session, depending how you look at it, about which one is better fit for my organization. I'm sure we'll be happy to come back. We'll schedule something, maybe even in person, depending on the schedule and availability. Yeah, thank you very much.
You'll be aware of any of our future sessions on Meetup. And yeah, I mean, thank you both so much for joining us in the last 4 weeks. Great series. And yeah, we really hope to see you again very soon with the reactor. If you have a moment, to the audience, if you have a few more minutes, I know we're almost at time, please take a few seconds to fill up our survey. We do really appreciate feedback. I dropped the link in the chat right here, and the event code is 15850. And as mentioned, join our community. All of our sessions are recorded on our YouTube channel. You can find future events on our Meetup. We're also on Twitter and all sorts of good stuff. Yeah, thanks again so much, Max and Dave. It's been great.
Thank you. And again, if you have any questions for myself or Dave after this, or you need any help, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a great day, all.